Hostel of Horror. Let me just preface this story as to why I was traveling alone. So, one of my best friends, Kayla, and I work seasonally at a hiking lodge in BC for the summertime. We're both girls in our early 20s. She lives and goes to school in New Brunswick, and I live and work as a chef in Toronto for the winter time. We decided this year, as I bought a car, instead of flying back home, we would do an epic Canadian coast-to-coast road trip. Everything was going wonderfully, so wonderfully in fact, we ended up staying longer in a few unexpected places and had to cut our East Coast portion of the trip short. Now my friend Kayla started her schooling on November 1st, so I dropped her home in Moncton, New Brunswick on Halloween and stayed the night at her place, planning to head back to Toronto the next day. After a few glasses of Chardonnay and some laughs, I decided I couldn't come this close to the East Coast and not see the Cabot Trail in Nova Scotia, something that has been on my bucket list for years now. So knowing I still had a week more of vacation before my winter contract, I hastily booked a hostel for the next day, November 1st, at the Acolyte Hostel at the Cabot Trail. When I booked, only one option came up. I assumed because I waited until the last minute to book it. A private dorm with a queen-size bed for $35. I thought, what a bargain, and booked immediately. I left Kayla's house in Moncton at 7 a.m. knowing it was a long drive. Now the Cabot Trail is roughly 150 kilometers long, so I thought to be safe, I plug the hostel address into my Google Maps and head straight there to get my bearings. I would arrive at the hostel for roughly noon, knowing it was too early to check in. I figured I'd consult with the front desk and figure out the nearby hiking trails and bring my bags in later. I was about to arrive at the hostel, according to Google, but all around me was nothing but farmland. Google instructed me the destination is on your left. I saw nothing. About 50 yards up the road, I saw a wire bar bent to look like the letter A spray painted bright red. I was staying at the Acolyte Hostel, so I guess that must be the place, and followed the dirt road. It led me to what I can only describe as a dilapidated barn, no signage. There were 2 cars parked in front, so I parked alongside and got out of my car to try and figure out where I was. Once I got out, a smallish man, around mid-40s with dark hair and intense eyes, popped out of the barn and asked me if I was staying with them tonight. I said yes. He asked why I booked so last minute, and I explained to him my situation. Seemingly satisfied with the answer I gave, he insisted on taking me on the grand tour of the barn. The first thing I noticed was that the entirety of the barn had been dug out around its foundation, about 5 feet deep and 3 feet around. He led me across some particle board laid down as a sort of ramp leading inside. The second thing I noticed about the property is that there were no windows. There was clearly a barn meant for livestock. The gentleman leading me on this tour was named Kevin, the owner. He proceeded to tell me his grand plans for the space. It all seemed pretty far-fetched, as it was just a big old barn with particle board separating most of the rooms. He led me up the skeleton stairs made of plywood and 2x4s to the cabin loft, where I would be sleeping that night, along with his family, the mother of his 5-year-old son, his son, and Kevin's own mother, who insisted I call her mom. The upstairs was certainly open concept. A frail curtain separated the beds to the sides, with a large open area in the middle. I asked if I was his only occupant that night. He said yes. I had a feeling he didn't often get many occupants. I told him I was interested in the hikes in the area and wanted to get to them before it got too dark. He gave me very detailed instructions of his favorite hikes and how to get to them, and off I went. I figured the place wasn't ideal, and I wished the website would have let me know it was still being built. But hey, I booked last minute and beggars can't be choosers, right? Plus he was very friendly and helpful on hiking advice. I hiked the area until it started getting dark. I didn't pack enough food for the day, but I figured I'd head into town for dinner. The nearest town was clearly a booming tourist destination during the summertime, but now in the off-season, it was a ghost town. All the hotels and B&Bs in the area were boarded up. Such a ghost town, even the liquor store was closed for the off-season. Finally, I found a dark, dingy, empty bar to eat dinner. It was, to phrase lightly, a disappointing supper. I had this romantic image in my head of me sitting on the harbor front, sipping on bubbly, slurping some ocean-fresh oysters. I was assured by the server, bartender, cook, the fried oysters I'd ordered was definitely not fresh. I didn't ask. I figured with all my options for things to do and see exhausted, I should head back to the hostel and read my book. I got back for roughly 8 p.m. I could smell the family that lived there was in the midst of cooking dinner. A little boy ran down the wood steps to greet me. He yelled, as little boys do, "My name's JP, what's yours?" I say, "Nice to meet you, JP. My name is Alex." He immediately said, if I wanted to come play. I said, definitely. Just let me put my bags down in my room first. He followed me through the translucent curtains to my room, so instead of getting settled in, I just headed straight out into the main area. I started throwing a foam ball around with JP. His mother, father, Kevin, the grandmother, mom, were all just sitting down to eat without even acknowledging we were there playing in front of them. The mother and father just start to seem like a basic argument, which then turns into them yelling at each other. Completely weirded out, I told JP I need to go to my room and call my mommy, as she's wondering where I am. Of course, the boy doesn't understand proper boundaries yet, follows me through the curtains and sits on my bed. I try taking his attention away from his family fighting, so I start asking him where he goes to school, his favorite color, etc. His mother starts calling for him. He doesn't answer, instead chooses to sit in my lap and hug me. Not wanting to cause any problems, I yell to the mother he is in my room. She runs in and snatches him off my lap and yells to a father, "I know what you're like when you get this angry. I'm taking JP. Don't follow us." I hear her book it down the stairs and him run after her. I hear a car start up in the lot and not just drive, but fucking peel out of that driveway. I hear him cursing. A door slams and then the sound of the excavator I had seen outside earlier that day came on. I guess he wanted to do some handiwork to let off some steam. Now, just left upstairs is me and Grandma, who still insisted I call her Mom. I walk out of my not-so-private curtain room with my bag and say, "Listen guys, you have been great hosts, but I should go." She starts rubbing my arm and telling me to stay, explaining her daughter-in-law doesn't understand Kevin like she does, and she's the real problem. Now I'm ready to tell Mom to fuck off and just leave, until I realize she has a knife in her hand from cooking dinner. It's only a 4-inch paring knife, but with intent, I'm sure it would do some damage. I don't think she meant it as a threat. I think she was just a kooky old bird who didn't understand. Maybe don't hold a knife while you're trying to console a stranger? So I go along with what she's saying, while she rubs my arm in one hand and flails the knife around in the other. I inch closer and closer downstairs and towards the door. She keeps rubbing my arm and shoulders with her free hand, telling me to stay, and that her grandson is special, and before I even booked the night, he had a premonition I would be staying with them. As soon as I get out the door, I run towards my car. I start my engine and back up in the lot to get out of there. Kevin in the excavator blocks the path, with about a 5-foot ditch on one side of the drive and forest behind me. He gets out, says he's sorry, and tells me I should stay. He'll make it up to me. Grandma comes out with the knife still in hand, saying it's Kevin's fault I'm leaving. They bicker for a full 5 minutes, until I yell if they don't let me leave, I'm calling the police. All of a sudden they get super defensive, like I'm the one being unreasonable. So I turn off my engine and start to dial. Kevin gets back in his excavator and starts backing up. As soon as he's far enough, I can see an opening to drive across the grass. I turn my engine back on and rip out of the drive. I'm sure doing a number on the suspension of my little sedan. As soon as the property is out of sight, I go to call my friend Kayla. No service. I remember back to earlier in the afternoon when I first got to the hostel. I was going to check my messages and saw the no service again. Even if I wanted to, I wouldn't have been able to call the cops. I drove the 6 hours straight to Moncton, New Brunswick, and stayed with Kayla. Perils of a commercial property owner. As I said, this post is long. You can skip to the end if you want to. I am an attorney with a small but prestigious law firm that typically represents high net worth individuals and their various companies. Most of our clients live within a township encompassed by one of the largest cities in America. We will call the township Parksville. Parksville is kind of like the Lower East Side of Manhattan, being encompassed by New York City. I know the difference, but just go with it. Real estate values in Parksville are expensive. We're talking about 2,000 square feet home, typically selling for $1.7 to $2.5 million. During the real estate meltdown in 2007 to 2009, we decided to relocate our offices into Parksville as commercial property values declined, in some cases by 50%. The firm decided to purchase a piece of commercial property located in Parksville, that seemed perfect for our needs and was listed at 50% what it was listed for only a couple years prior, and consisted of an underground parking garage, open space on the first floor, and a large space on the second floor, together with an elevator and rear stairwell that accessed the underground parking. It needed renovations and was far too large for just our firm. We figured we could use some space to put a gym, kitchen, and other utilities, then rent out the rear section of the building to other businesses. Once the renovations were complete, 3 tenants ended up occupying the small suites of offices near the rear of the second floor of the building. Our offices occupied the front half of the second floor of the building, with a gym and kitchen located on the first floor, along with a reception area as well. For security, we installed security cameras in the parking garage, front entrance, and stairwell. Security actually was needed because a public bus stop is located near our building, and certain homeless or other transients would stop off at the bus stop and panhandle or really just harass passerbys while they waited for the bus. Every now and again, some homeless person would sneak into the parking garage to take refuge from the intense summer heat or cold nights in the winter, and we'd have to chase them off the property. Once we started accepting leases, the place leased up quickly. The first tenant was an architecture firm, the next down the row was a psychologist, and finally the third was a talent acquisition firm. The owner of the talent acquisition firm, Mark, originally seemed like a legitimate businessman, helping models find paid gigs and shows. Because Mark's models typically had a day job or were in school, he usually met his clients later in the evening. When we would be working late hours on a case, we would see Mark show up with clients around 10:30 in the evening, sometimes even later, but we would never see the clients come in the front door. After reviewing the security footage, we discovered Mark would unlock the top door of the rear stairwell to let the models in directly from the garage. Because his office was closest to the rear stairwell door, why they couldn't just use the front entrance, I never did understand. The rear door to the stairwell is a very heavy steel door, so when it shuts, it is audible all the way across the building in my office. The trouble was that Mark was a drunk. Most of the time he showed up late in the evenings. He reeked of alcohol. Not a violation of the lease, but still, given he was impaired, he would often forget to relock the rear stairwell door, creating a huge safety concern given the transient problem we experienced. We warned Mark several times to relock the rear door or just use the front. Mark would shrug his shoulders. Mark caused several problems at the office building, strange things ranging from hosting parties for models on the weekends to putting out an ad seeking white trash models for a specific photo shoot. However, Mark wasn't creepy. His habit of leaving the rear door unlocked is what led to the creep. So here is where the creep enters. I was working alone late one night on a massive case with a pending deadline the next day and a lot of work to do before then. It was about 1:30 in the morning and I hear the rear door shut. Annoyed, I want to make sure Mark relocked the door, so I called his office. First ring, no answer. Second ring, no answer. Third ring, no answer. He must be ignoring my call, I thought to myself. Fine, I'll just go lock it myself. I head to the rear of the building when I noticed Mark's office was completely dark. That's strange. Then I thought Mark must have slipped out the back door. He's got a key. He can get back if he needs to. I lock the back door and head back downstairs towards my office. After I enter my office, I notice a light on in an office that belonged to another attorney at our firm. I didn't think anything of it, thinking that Charles, one of our attorneys, was working on a case. I go back to say hi. I turn the corner into his office, but it isn't Charles. A man appearing to be homeless is digging through one of the file boxes in Charles' office. "What the fuck are you doing?" I shout at the homeless man. He stands up. The dude has to be 6'4", likely 250 or 260 pounds. 4 of his teeth are gold. He looks at me. "Is this a dentist's office?" Yes. "No, dude, this isn't a dentist's office. But I'm pretty sure you could figure that out, seeing you're digging through that file." The man slowly puts the lid back on the file and looks at me like he wants to kill me, that I interrupted something important. But what the hell could this homeless man really want with information located in those boxes? It isn't cash. There was no banking records in the box. I was dumbfounded. The man stood there just staring at me, one of his hands in his jacket pocket, and I think, oh shit, he has a gun or something. I've spent many years studying several disciplines of martial arts, but getting shot is not on my to-do list. I moved to kind of put part on the door between us, so that if he does shoot, I have a chance of running to another office. But the homeless man didn't pull a knife or a gun, or any weapon. He simply excuses himself, apologizing for the mix-up, and briskly walks out of our suite and out the front door. I head back to my office, and immediately sent an email warning of the intrusion and emailed all the tenants to be vigilant in making sure the back door was locked at all times. I chalk up the experience as just a weird encounter and head home for the evening, seeing as nothing was missing and apparently caught the guy before he could really find anything. 2 days later, the majority of the office was out to lunch. One of the associates, Emily, her secretary, and the receptionist were the only ones left. Emily's office adjoins Charles' office, and her secretary sits in a cubicle facing away from Charles's office. Apparently, the receptionist stepped out to run to the restroom. Suddenly, Emily's secretary hears a startling scream coming from Emily's office, followed by, "Who are you?" Emily would later explain she had gone up from her desk to get some more coffee when she saw a tall figure rummaging around Charles's office, digging through files again. She stated that the man grabbed her arm. Now Emily is 5 feet tall, 96 pounds. She's tiny, and this huge man grabbed hold of her, leaving physical bruises on her arm. He shouted at her, "Where's your fucking file, you bitch?" Emily panically screamed that she had no idea what he was talking about, but he wouldn't listen. He just kept shouting, "Yes, you do. Don't you tell me that. I know you do," etc. At that point, Emily's secretary shouted that the police were on the way and that he better get out. The man let Emily go and ran out the door again. By the time the rest of us arrived, the police were there, who requested the security footage. However, after they reviewed the tape, it was useless. All you could see was a homeless-looking man walk down the parking garage and up the rear stairwell, wearing an old ratty jacket and a wool cap. I warned Mark that his behavior of leaving the rear door unlocked has started to create a safety issue for the other tenants and was in violation of his lease. He swore he would never do it again. We didn't see that guy again, and we kind of just chopped it up to a drug addict looking to cause problems, but I couldn't help to ponder, what file was he looking for? Is he perhaps related to one of our clients? I doubt it, seeing that our clients typically have a net worth of $30 million or more. Something just didn't sit right with me, but again, it had been a month or so, and we hadn't had any other encounters with the guy, so it wasn't any longer on my mind, till things quickly escalated. I ended up having to work late on a Sunday night. Usually I never work late on the weekends, if I have to work at all, but deadlines are deadlines, and I found myself at the office trying to get a brief finalized. I hear the rear stairwell door close again. It's that sound of a tight metal door closing, with a soft vibration that reverberates throughout the floor. This time I was a little uneasy. Could it seriously be that guy again, or is just one of Mark's models? I thought to myself. A few moments passed, but then I hear the door handle to her office suite start to jiggle and jiggle. I didn't bother unlocking the doors to her office suite because it was a Sunday night. Nobody was expected to come in or out. The jiggling gets louder and louder, to the point that it sounded like someone was trying to break off the door handle. What the fuck is that? I think to myself. It has to be that guy again, was my only thought. I called the police immediately, and was told to stay on the phone and lock myself in my office, and the police would be on their way. I do. The jiggling escalates to banging on the door. I'm thinking, this is really out of control. This guy is seriously trying to break into the office this time, and seems completely irate. At least I'm guessing it is the same guy. I honestly didn't give a shit if it was the same guy or a different guy. I wasn't about to see who it was and let them know I was in the office. Suddenly the noise stops. A full minute passes, then a full second minute. Hold on, I tell the dispatch. I think he may be gone. I don't hear anything anymore. No more banging, I tell them. I go outside my office and look through the glass door. Nope, the same guy was standing there in mid-motion of throwing a full cinder block at the door. He must have gone to get something to break the glass door. When it all went quiet, the guy grinned at me and smashed the glass. I told him the police were on their way, but he ran at me and lunged towards to tackle me on the floor. Instinctively, I kick, hitting the guy in the nose, causing his nose to bleed. But I think this guy was on something, as it seriously had no effect, and he managed to tackle me to the ground. I was trying to block myself as the guy trying to get his hands around my neck and trying to reverse the situation as the guy grunts at me before he screamed at me, "Where is the goddamn file?" I ignored him as I genuinely had no fucking idea what this guy was after, and I seriously believed I was fighting for my life. Luckily, the police came very shortly after, though. At the time, it seemed like we were grappling for ages while we struggled on the floor. The police grab him and they force him off, but it still took all three of us to subdue this guy and get him into handcuffs. He was seriously fucking strong. I see how he bruised Emily so easily, and it probably did not help one of the officers, I'm quite sure, could not have passed whatever physical fitness test they have. Apparently at the police station, the man ended up revealing that he was sitting at the bus stop one day when a man approached him and asked him to steal a certain set of files from our office belonging to one of our clients' companies. Hi, having to do with proposed royalty payments and oil and gas leases for various interests. The stranger promised the man he would get $1,000 if he did, but didn't have a name for the guy, and the phone number the homeless man was supposed to call the stranger at was listed as a prepaid phone registered to a fake name. To this day, I'm not sure if the homeless man was telling the truth about the offer or not. Who would be interested in that file, and why they would go to such lengths for the contents of that file? We ended up evicting Mark and installed additional security cameras, something I really did not think we would need, moving the firm to such an exclusive location. But I guess this goes to show that you can encounter the crazy even behind gilded walls. Anyways, this happened about 8 months ago, and we haven't had any issues since. Still, if you get out of jail, creepy dude, let's not meet again. The toolshed of love. This is a true story. When you're a child, the world is a playground. It was the first official day of summer, and I just made a pact with my closest friends, Josh, Ryan, and Mikey. We paused the game of Super Smash Bros. To agree in unison that we had to live up every single day, rain or shine, because junior high awaited us in the fall. Yeah, we literally had a fear of losing each other. As a club, we called it, because the thought of combining 2 elementary schools into a new building scared the shit out of us. Little did we know at the time what high school, or even college, would present. To have a young mind again. We sealed this pact with a 4-way special club handshake, and the first adventure was about to begin. We turned off the N64, threw out our Lunchables, and all sprinted outside of Josh's house. His house was at the very end of a dead-end street, and we each already knew which direction to set off in. All 4 of us grabbed our bikes and quickly hopped on to ride together. I called for a spontaneous bike race to the next street sign about a half-mile down the road, and everyone joined in. I won, of course, since I gave myself a bit of a head start in the beginning. I was nearly beat by Ryan, though, who, for his birthday, had received the newest and fastest bike a kid our age heard about. My old beat-down BMX bike stood no chance in a fair race, but I would never admit that. We biked around for hours, stopping at convenience stores for snacks, and going from park to park just playing around. Even though literally nothing special occurred, it was still an amazing day. My friends and I never had big ideas of where we were going, or what we were going to do, but back then at least, when you were with your best friends, plans didn't matter, they just happened. It was just before dusk, and we were going back to Josh's house. The pace was incredibly slow, since we had biked around for 6 hours with minimal rest. We turned onto the street, when Mikey's Game Boy Color fell out of his pocket. Why he didn't leave it at the house earlier, I did not know. We all stopped with him as he went to retrieve it, and that gave me a moment to rest my legs a bit. I looked around the calm and content street, only to notice a creepy, woody lot that no kids ever went into. The lot had been up for sale for quite some time, but no one ever bought it. That gave reason for all the neighborhood kids to speculate about whether or not it's haunted. There was a rumor that, beyond the lot, as it backed up into a forest, there was an abandoned clubhouse. Then I thought, wait, we could take over that clubhouse. We should be the first kids to ever enter the lot. I pitched the idea to my friends, who were split on it. Ryan really wanted to go, Josh really didn't want to go, and Mikey was at the point of crying because he declared his Game Boy Color broken. I eventually convinced all of them that we should be the first kids brave enough to enter the lot, and since we had our own club, taking over the clubhouse would be epic. We went over to it, made sure no neighbors were watching, and then sprinted our bikes inside the woods. We hit them on the side and took our first steps into the dark and ominous lot. Even though the sun had not officially set, the woods were nearly pitch black. No one had flashlights, but our eyes eventually adjusted. We got to the very end of the lot. We knew that because of a broken-down, rusty fence, we looked past it into what was a thicker and more dense version of the woods on this lot. Still, no one backed out, so we hopped the fence going forwards. We walked for a good mile before finding the clubhouse, but disappointment set in as we saw it was broken down to the point that the only fix was completely rebuilding it. Great, so much for that. We began to go back when Ryan noticed something in front of us. There was a dim fire lit in the distance, and voices were softly heard. I put my finger to my mouth to motion silence. How we went to sneak up closer, we saw nothing as we snuck up, staying hidden behind bushes, but we began to hear the voices more vividly. There were chants that made no sense to us. It was not English. We got about 50 yards away when I peeked over the bush in front of me. I saw 3 figures, with all black clothing, sitting on individual benches around a fire. There was a small broken down tool shed near this fire pit as well. It was painted bright pink, with hippie flowers and peace signs drawn onto it. There was writing as well, but I could not make it out. It was an odd image to see, dark characters next to a bright shed, but the situation was already weird enough. I sat back down as the chanting continued, with the same words over and over again. It sounded like Totus, Intero, Nazago. I looked at my friends, who were obviously terrified of what we were both seeing and hearing. I attempted to think a way out, but then the chanting stopped. My heart dropped as I peeked over the bush again. I saw the figures all leaving the opposite direction from where we came, going deeper into the woods. Once the figures were officially gone, all 4 of us stood up, terrified, still whispering. Josh pleaded that all of us sprint back the way we came. Ryan agreed that we should, but countered that, first, we should look inside of the tool shed. Originally, I was all up for leaving immediately, but I had forgot about the shed. Mikey stood silent. The kid never had an opinion. Reluctantly, Josh agreed, so we all snuck past the still burning fire to go by the shed. I could now read the writing that was on it. It said, "The tool shed of love." We got around to the front of the shed, and Ryan was the first to enter. He turned around and whispered that it was shut with a master lock. However, Mikey finally spoke and pointed out that everything was so old it could be broken into. After kicking it 3 times, the lock fell off with the front part of the latch. The door slightly opened on its own, and we knew. Now, we could enter it. I was the first to the door, having been the one to kick it open, when I got a whiff of a horrible odor. I quickly plugged my nose, not thinking much of it. When I swung the door wide open, we all screamed, like girls, at what we saw. Inside the shed were 7 mutilated rabbits, hanging from the ceiling on fishing lines. Behind them on shelves were dead squirrels and chipmunks. Around that were old burnt candles everywhere, along with a fake human skull. We continued to scream as we turned to run back. Just as we did that, in the distance, we saw the 3 figures returning. They all saw us as well, pointing and screaming while beginning to run. I screamed even louder as I sprinted away faster than I ever had in my entire life before. I got in front of all my friends and did not look back for about 30 seconds. I glanced behind to see that all the guys were still with me, and the 3 figures had stopped chasing us. That, however, did not derail my pace. As I continued to sprint at full speed, we finally got to where we stashed our bikes and quickly left the lot. We got back to Josh's house, and he immediately, as kids that age tend to do, told his parents what we saw and found. They wound up calling the town police just to check it out, and the cops did. A couple hours later, an officer showed up to the house. We were in Josh's bedroom, but all stayed quiet and huddled around the door to listen as the cop was let in. He told the parents that they found everything that we had said was there, but no people. He stated that they have seen similar events in those woods and believe it is the work of a local cult. He urged them that nobody on the street should be afraid, but everyone should avoid entering that lot and forest. We then heard the cop asking where his kids were, so we quickly left the door and pretended to do something. I believe I may have held a book upside down briefly, if I do remember correctly. The cop knocked on the door and we let him in. He went on to explain to us that people who are not so nice hang out in those woods, and that we should never enter there again. He asked us if we understood, and we all said, yes. He then shook our hands and then left. We got the same exact talk moments later from Josh's parents, and normally I would have been annoyed, but clearly this was a different type of situation. Even though we were rebellious as the next kid was, neither of us ever went back into the lot and forest. About a year after all this happened, the lot was purchased by a contractor. Today, a giant house sits on the lot. I wonder if the occupants know what occurred there decades prior.